In this video, I'll show you how to use filters and long exposure creatively. Filters control the scene contrast, colour and look of the image. There are 4 ND filters, ND grads which are both slide and screw in, polarizers and colour filters. ND grads are really good for giving those moody skies, especially with black and white landscapes. You could adjust the image in post afterwards using HDR techniques, but sometimes this can look a little bit overdone, so just try to keep it natural and you'll end up with quite a nice image. One thing that you'll find is highlight details are really difficult to pull back, and this is where ND filters, both full and grad, are really useful. You'll find the ND filters come in different grades or stops, and there'll be 1, 2, 3, right the way up to 10 stops. They are often labelled as ND2, ND4, ND8 or 0.3, 0.6 and 0.9. I quite like using the free-stop filter, the ND8 or the 0.9. This is really useful for bringing down sky detail. Before putting the ND filter on, you will need to know the diameter of your lens. If you look on the front, you'll see a number, in this case 58mm, with a circle and a line through it. That's the diameter. So that's the adapter size that you're going to attach, like this. And then we're going to put the filter holder over the top. And then finally, we can slide in our ND filter. If we want to photograph a landscape and reduce the amount of brightness in the sky, we're going to use an ND grad. To determine what number we need to use, we need to take a picture of the whole scene. If you put it into aperture priority mode with 0 exposure compensation set, that should give you a fairly accurate picture. What you then need to do is darken that down to say -1, 2 or 3 and make sure that your sky is looking the way that you want it to. If -3 is okay, then put an ND8 in, a 3-stop. If -2, put in an ND4, a 2-stop. It's fairly straightforward and fairly easy, so give that a go. In manual mode, you need to take an exposure of the land and an exposure of the sky. If you look at the difference in shutter speed, this should give you the stops. So if the ground was 125th, but the sky was registered at 1,000th of a second, well that's 3 stops, so therefore you use an ND8. What I wouldn't do is try to combine too many filters because you'll have to colour cast and also possibly reflections. When using polarizers, they're really good for reducing reflections. It's a lot of work in post and often not possible, so they're quite a vital piece of equipment. Traditionally they were used to improve blue skies, but to be honest that could be done in post. Really they're much better for removing reflections from glass and water, but not mirrors. Also they can be used for taking down reflection from foliage and leaves, even on a cloudy day. With a polarizer you need to be 90 degrees to the sun, so if the sun is over here or there and your building's here, you're more likely to get reflections reduced. The other thing that helps is to use lenses that are longer than 35mm. Long exposure photography is best done in low light, or shady areas, early morning, late evening and even night time. You may find that you still need a full ND, especially if the conditions are a little bright. For evening, sunset and nighttime photography, you will still need to use an ND grad. This is because the sky is a lot brighter than the land, so either the land will end up underexposing or the sky will end up overexposing. When you use the ND filter, you bring a bit more balance to the image. As with all long exposure photography, you will need a tripod. Turn the image stabilization off and set the self timer to 2 seconds. Some cameras will use a phone app, and this is really handy because all of this helps reduce camera shake. Depending on the light conditions, some nighttime photographs will be up to several minutes. Usually though 30 seconds to a minute is enough. This will blur the water, the clouds and even the stars, adding a bit of movement and drama to the image. When you want to blur water, such as from a river or a waterfall, again I would say try to use low light conditions, early morning, late evening or somewhere that's really shady. You will still need to use an ND filter because when the shutter speeds get incredibly slow, you run out of apertures. So this helps reduce the light levels down. Something like an ND8 or possibly even a 10 stop would be really handy for this. When photographing water, using a shutter speed of around half a second, you'll start to see significant blurring, and from 4 to 15 seconds you'll get that effect that's commonly used. This does depend on the speed of the river or the waterfall, so do some test shots and see which shutter speed works best for you. You don't always have to use a slow shutter speed. Try 1/50th. This is much closer to how our brains see water move. And it does have some movement in there, but it's not that kind of milky, sort of icy looking water. It's something little bit more realistic. So again, just practice different shutter speeds and try to get it to suit the mood you're after. When you're starting out, it's probably worth using shutter priority. This is TV or S on the mode dial. You can set the ISO to auto and then adjust the shutter speed for your desired effect. You may still need to use a full ND with the slower shutter speeds, but just give it a go. I prefer to shoot in manual mode. This means I can control my aperture, my ISO, and I know what image I'm going to get. Sometimes when the sky's bright, I will put an ND grad on. This just allows the scene to be a bit more balanced, and just be careful because you will get a little bit of colour cast from the two filters. What I'd recommend doing is just going out and experimenting, really playing around with different shutter speeds, and just come up with something that you like.